What's up, everybody? Today, I'm delighted to have Andrea from the YouTube channel Andrea with the Bangs in the yours truly virtual studio. As I've said on occasion, it's sometimes hard to know exactly when or where you first bump into someone here in this little corner of the internet. But most of the time, it's because someone is talking on the internet about some of the ever fascinating, meaning-making heavy hitters in the corner. People like Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Pageau, Paul Vanderklay, or John Vervaeke, and the like. And Andrea is a classic and maybe even the perfect example of this. 5 years ago, Andrea started thinking out loud here on YouTube, and her 8th video hit a little bit of virality, currently at 112,000 views, the video entitled The Intolerable Dr. Peterson, where she gave a 6-minute report about one of the many cancellations of Jordan Peterson happening at the time. Some of the other early titles of her videos include thoughts and reports on the intellectual dark web, or IDW, the infamous name given to the loosely banded group of public intellectuals who were coming together around the principle of free speech that in a previous public life would have been hurling arguments about the existence of God and fighting about whether religion was a force for good or evil in the world. Some 5 years ago, a group that included people already mentioned like Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Ben Shapiro, and the Weinstein brothers, even Joe Rogan. Andrea was a pioneer in this little corner of the internet, next to Paul Vanderklay, documenting, discussing, and synthesizing the specific cultural moment. As has been the pattern, or at least mine, Andrea quickly began developing her own conversation craft by hosting podcast conversations. Some of her notable conversation partners include Jonathan Pageau, Paul Vanderklay, Justin Brierley from the Surprising Rebirth and the Belief in God podcast, Father Stephen Damick from the Lord of Spirits podcast, Richard Rowland, Benjamin Boyce, Helen Pluckrose, and James Lindsay from the infamous Grievance Studies papers, and David Fuller, founder of the Rebel Wisdom YouTube channel. Quite a catalog. Before we go any further, if this video is helpful, give it a like. If you want to keep up with the channel, hit subscribe. And if supporting the channel makes sense for you, consider one of 3 channel membership options. Channel members gain access to early podcast previews and members-only content. Top-tier members gain a voice to help build this little corner of the internet. So check them out. Membership link in the description. In real time, while doing research and typing this intro, I came across a video on Andrea's channel entitled Thinking Out Loud, looking at Jordan Peterson's way of seeing truth, which kind of stopped me in my tracks because that really encapsulates much of the spirit in which this channel was started. It feels something like Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance, or like the woo connection between two folks in different countries picking up on many of the same cultural happenings, with a pressing need to get it out there into the world using something like echolocation to make sure sense is being made in our own various worlds, struggling to make sense of themselves. And with that said, I think this means Andrea and I'll have much to converse upon today here on the Yours Truly podcast. So without any further delay, I give you Andrea with the Bangs.
Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.
Andrea.
Hello, Christian. That was quite the intro. Like, what a walk down memory lane for me.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I do them all for the reaction that I'm getting right now. That's mainly why.
You're like, you don't remember you, but I do.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing. That's the interesting thing is that I didn't know about the subculture. I was watching all the same videos, but I did not know that there was this thing happening the whole time. And there's some reasons for that we can talk about later. But yeah, that's how I, I'm just looking like, oh, this person's been doing this, everything. There's a whole thing, and yeah. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I think it's so appropriate. So Andrea with the Bangs. I'm gonna say, let's see. There were so many things. There were so many things I wanted to start to talk about, but I listened. So before this afternoon, I was listening to your rando with Paul. I was like, because I was talking to another friend who's doing podcasting, and he's really good at like asking good questions, and so I was asking him about that, and there's so much of you that's been covered in various places in this corner. It's like hard to say, oh, is there another angle? I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can find one. So I'm just going to say this. Well, okay, here's how I want to. The most interesting thing that I thought about listening to your story and that I've viewed kind of your catalog and everything is Jordan Peterson caused a deconstruction for you instead of a reconstruction for you. And I haven't ever heard that anywhere else.
Really? Oh, okay. I've never thought of myself as unique in that, but I suppose you're right, because he's kickstarted a lot of spiritual
Reconstruction.
journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah. People
But
to go
for
back to
you,
their Bibles.
yeah, for you, it was kind of the opposite.
Mhm.
So could you like talk about that for a second? Like, what I'm curious to go deeper or talk about again, because I know you talked about that with Paul, but how did Jordan Peterson deconstruct your Christian faith?
So because of the way that he spoke, he took the Bible seriously. He took Christianity seriously. And so that made me that found my attention, I guess. And it kept my attention. And I watched all of his biblical series. And so when you grow up in a Protestant home in North America, at least for me, my mother was Southern Baptist, moved up to Canada, met my father at a very conservative, like Prairie Bible Institute is what it's called. So if there's ever a Bible Institute, it's pretty conservative. Some could say fundamental.
You're preaching to the choir. We can get into that later. Yeah.
So it's sort of taking the Bible in a, new world, new earth, young earth. Sorry, I should say young earth creation, and taking those sorts of things very like science textbooky, and looking at Revelation as, like, let's figure it out. It's saying what's going to happen. Let's figure out, when do we think the tribs happen? When is it going to be happening? Like, let's figure it. Is it going to be mid-trib, pre-trib, or post-trib by the tribulation? For any of you who don't know
Listen, I think let me go ahead and get this out there. Raised Southern Baptist, raised very dispensational, charismatic with my dad, and Young Earth we had like people come to our church do Young Earth presentations. So
yeah, it's sort of like, because I don't want to make it sound like my poor mother, like my mother has passed away. She's in heaven now. She's in glory. So I'm not, she's fine. She knows the truth now of all the things that, but we spent a lot of time on other things, but that was the thing, talking about the creation and the literal creation and the sort of friction between that and evolution. And that just sort of, it was something that was talked about in a fiery way, I guess. And I guess that gets conversations and talked about a lot when there's a bit of controversy around it, I suppose. And so hearing Jordan Peterson talk about these myths in a way, wove them into the biblical account, and not trying to say, and here's why the biblical account is silly, and just like all these other gods, it's the same. I've seen that come up. Oh, they're just stealing from Yahweh is just Yahweh Baal, and like whatever. Father Stephen talks about this on the Lord of Spirits podcast about why that's a bad argument. But Peterson wasn't doing that. He was taking it seriously. And so I took evolution seriously because he took Christianity, not creationism. Freudian slip. No, but he took Christianity seriously. So I took the theory of evolution seriously, and sort of put it in a place. The creation of the world, it doesn't really matter in the sense of what matters is who did it. And I've heard this said. It sort of started in my geology class I took. And like my professor was a Christian university, But he sort of laid out these different things. And I was like, yeah, it kind of seems like it was longer than 6,000 years old. So it had already started, that sort of idea. But I guess I got onto Twitter as well at the same time that I was listening to Jordan Peterson. And because I was like, I think I want to do this. I want to work through some things and talk to people who are in this sort of movement. I guess I just wanted to I wanted to participate.
Mhm.
I wanted to be part of it. And so I'm like, I think it's Twitter. I think Twitter is the space that you can connect with people. And it actually worked. Apparently, I'm very good at marketing. Sorry, not marketing my YouTube channel. As you can see, my numbers have been pretty stagnant for the past few years. But when it comes to getting people to come on my show, it wasn't too terribly difficult because I just was writing things and writing back and forth and just would message people and ask them to come on. And so that went well. But the people I was speaking with, they were more on the scientific side, scientists, philosophers, like thought people. And so, the people who are like part of this intellectual dark web thing ish. And then I started kind of getting, and even looking at people who are like anthropologists and things like that. So it wasn't only scientists and it wasn't only like philosophers, but this idea of, oh yes, people do need meaning. Yes. And we look what we've made. Look what we've created. We've created stories that make something or someone bigger than ourselves. And again, this is sort of similar to what Peterson's saying as well. And I am like, did we just do it? Like, I didn't think so. I didn't actually think so, but I questioned.
Sure.
And I thought, when it says, when the Apostle Paul is on the road to Damascus and it says that it's like, no.
Scales.
When the scales falling from his eyes. I don't know if that was when he could see again or when he encountered the risen Christ. And it's like the scales fell, whatever it was. Scales fell from his eyes. So I look at the reverse happened, where like my spiritual eye was having like sort of a calcification, I call it, of a sort of horizontal vision, an Aristotelian vision, and my Platonic spiritual vision, my vertical vision, it was getting calcified. So that's a picture. That's sort of the picture I have built to sort of understand what did happen to me in that time. And so I was very lost feeling. I call it my dark night of the soul. I think that's like a Catholic thing. I know that I didn't make that up. I think that's from like John of Damascus or someone. So anyways, but it's something, I just felt very depressed. My ennui was in fullness. And I also was in a space where I was trying to be like, what am I? Who am I? I have my children, but my kids are, now they're definitely quite old, like much, much old. Like now they're 12, 10, and 8. But I think at the time my youngest was 3. So 3, 5, and 7. And I just was very like, okay, so they can all go up and down the stairs fine. Mm-hmm. So I have a different like space where I'm a little bit more free. And so as a woman, I'm like, well, I'm a mother very clearly. But what else though? So I was very like searching. I didn't even know I was, but I think I just was. And that's when with Peterson, it's like I thought again. I used my mind, my frontal cortex rather than the survival space of, keep them alive.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened with my reversal. Because I did come out of it. Because when I found Pajot, I already had seen him a while back, but I just didn't really look into his stuff. But I found Paul first through Benjamin Boyce, and I wrote Paul, and he luckily wrote me back. And
yeah, that was a beautiful exchange.
Yeah. Did you see the first one? Did you watch my first interview with him?
Yeah. I was not yours, but when you went a year or so ago, you did a rando. You went on his channel and did.
I did. Yes, I did. Oh yeah. So I can't remember where I shared this story. So I must have talked about this already. So he came onto my channel, and yes, that's where he was like, I hope I wrote her back. I'm like, you did. You did, like, because he gets so many messages. He's like, I don't know the letter. I can't. He doesn't know who wrote, like, what face wrote the letter, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, the word made flesh and dwelt among us. You know, the
Yes.
story. It's because of the way he said it. It's like the story. The story was made flesh.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I was a horrible interviewer in that particular episode. I was so, but this, but like I was
You were
like,
working through it. You were
I
talking
was.
to a pastor. You were talking to a pastor.
Well, I was talking to a pastor that I'm like, you get it. You're not like those other pastors. That's why I said you're a cool pastor. No, but he was online. He got it. He got Peterson. He understood what I was going through.
Mm.
And I was like, I know how I sound, in the sense of, like, if I go to any random pastor from my church, not random, but like the couple pastors at my church, they'll be like, oh no, crisis of faith. Oh no, poor girl, you know, whatever. I was afraid of this. I didn't actually do it. But I was like, no, it's different. And I'm all like, I'm not like the other crisis of faith Christians. Like, maybe I'm being too
I'm an individual.
I'm a cool crisis of faith Christian. So
Yeah.
maybe that's bad of me. I don't know. But I'm like, they won't get it. They didn't know Jordan Peterson back then.
Right.
Now most pastors have heard of him.
Yeah, they're all thankful for him. They're all playing catch up. I remember having a distinct. Yeah, I had my own dark night of the soul, and that there's a whole story there. But Peterson was a huge part of, you know, that's why I'm talking about it now, because it's just it's a pattern, and like as I said in your intro, like now I'm seeing that I'm just doing what everyone else did, but that's okay.
It's okay, and it's nice to talk to them because they're like similar.
Yes, and I remember saying to one of my pastor friends, who I used to work with, but he was still a pastor at the church, and I was like, "You heard of Jordan Peterson?" He's like, "Yeah, that heretic," and I was like, "Oh, I don't think I can talk about this right now." and so
that's it. That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, and there was that. But what's interesting hearing your story with how he, you know, because he was alongside of me in a rebuilding time like that, like a kind of a guide along the way, but it sounds like, knowing very viscerally where you're coming from, I went to a Southern Baptist college and got a biblical studies degree too.
I have a Christian studies degree.
Yeah. And so, was raised Southern Baptist youth group, and you know, I did, instead of doing a mission trip stuff, I did church camp stuff for like years, you know, and but the idea that he was getting you to actually look more horizontal actually sounds like that was actually good. Like to look, but it was jarring because you had so much of your life had just been, you know, all the things,
God.
personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and you know, knowing the exact, nobody's supposed to know the exact time of day, but you better be knowing the signs of time. And what was the other thing you mentioned, which was just
the science textbook of
the young earth thing. And the young earth thing got, you know, that was a long journey for me. But I was, you know, I guess maybe this is because we're close to the same age. I'm 39. Are you 38?
I'm 38.
Yeah. So when you had very small children, I was on YouTube watching Young Earth and intellectual, or what's the design, the design guys debate, you know, Richard Dock. I was watching all of all the new atheist stuff.
Right. Yeah. The Four Horsemen guys. Yeah.
So that was all like my insecurities and my faith leading up to Peterson. Peterson helped synthesize all that for me very quick. Like that was kind of that difference. But so you started talking about this stuff. When did you, and then you found Paul, and then you found like the Bridges of Meaning Discord. So like, but you were already kind of talking about this on your own. Did you just get on YouTube on your own to do that? Yeah. Tell me about why you decided on that kind of on your own, it sounds like.
So I'm sort of embarrassed about it because I feel like it's kind of silly now. Because it's not a high priority. The things that the reasons why I joined aren't a high priority for me now.
That's okay.
Because I thought that like everyone's being silenced and no one's allowed to just be honest, and people are losing jobs. And I was like, well, I just am a mom. I'm not worried about getting silenced and
Canceled.
kicked and canceled and kicked out of my job and like blah blah. So I'm all like, I will give of myself and I will go on and interview these people and give them a voice. And it was like it was honest. Like I honestly thought that. But
I think that you can still that it's actually important that if you're embarrassed that you can still say that's what you were feeling though.
Well, it was a little naive because I was like, oh, they're clamoring to talk to you, Andrea. Mind you, okay, I guess I actually did a good job of getting people. Like I did, like better than I realized. But I think I also I actually kind of just wanted to talk to him a little bit. Like I was like, oh, I guess if I want to talk to Jordan Peterson, I'll also have to be doing this. Yeah. I didn't do it to be able to talk to Jordan Peterson, but I thought, oh, maybe if I take off, maybe I could. Maybe that could be part of this and that'd be kind of cool. Yeah. So that was part of it. But I was like, oh, I'll be one of the people who will like give people a platform if they want it. And it's sort of the political stuff. I didn't even like watch much of that side of his videos. Mostly. So that's why it was a funny motivation, because I'm like, I don't care really much about the free speech stuff, except for like, I feel bad for the people who can't talk. So I'll want to have them on, but I also am interested in meaning. And oh, wait, I'm more interested in that now.
You're more interested in meeting Peterson or doing
meaning, like his talks about finding meaning and finding purpose. Yes. Those are the things that I was drawn to more. Yeah. And so that's where the direction I took my channel was, and because I did start off by talking to a lot of the more like controversial people. As mentioned. Yes. And I was friendly with them. Like some of them I just was like, oh, like they're just like nice people in general. And that's, I like that I got to get to know some people there. But I just wanted to, like be part of. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna be part of this thing, and I just wanted to be part of it. And so I just had this little. I think I could figure it out, And I did have some help. Like I, through being on Twitter, Benjamin Boyce messaged me and asked like, oh, when is your YouTube channel coming out? Because I mentioned YouTube channel coming soon, like on my little bio. And he's like, is it out? And I was like, no, I don't know how to do it yet. And so he helped me kind of get set up with a couple of things. Yeah. And so like, that was nice, kind of. So I suppose that was helpful for getting me started. Literally like helping me with the more technical side of it. Sure. Like telling me what sort of just tech to get. Mm-hmm. So and helping me know what programs for editing and things like that. So that was nice, because I would have had no idea. So and then I think I've lost the question now. Just why you started, but you were saying it was like because I want to be part of this. Maybe I could meet Jordan Peterson. Maybe we'll just interview him. Maybe be a voice for the canceled. All the yeah. But I don't. Listen, I mean, I probably share some of those same kind of like things, like, and even though I think the reason I didn't recognize that there were people other than like the big heavy hitter people talking online about this stuff was because I wasn't in a place in my life where it was really even good for me to try to get into like community with people online and that kind of stuff. So, so that was probably good. But whenever I did come to that place and I was ready for that, there were people who had been doing that. And I was like, okay, yeah. And people, instead of being like, maybe just even the same thing that you were saying is like, oh, I want to be a part. I think I want to be part of this thing. And like, I bought, what is it? Critical Theories. I bought, I actually messaged Helen Pluckrose one time on Twitter years ago when when everything was just like, people talk about this election season being intense. Like for me,
2019 was like,
It was a very intense year. Yeah.
I don't have the same feelings, but I think I'm in a different place, and maybe that's part of it. But like during that time, yeah, everything was much more intense to me. And so yeah, it was like wanting to be a part of something. And it sounds like even that that video I referenced that you made, like thinking out loud, like just the idea though, even though you were kind of sheepish about it, the idea of having like what's the big word that people say, like ownership of your own voice, like having autonomy or something. Like I think there is something to that. Like it maybe it feels not a big deal now that you've done it for 5 years, but like 6-7 months ago, it's like, I'm gonna get on the internet and talk.
Yeah, no, it was yeah. And I was like, I think I'm in the minority. There's not many girls here.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there are on Instagram, but I'm like, I'm not expecting to make it there. but it was, I it's also like, oh, you know what, moms have thoughts, and it's not about kids necessarily.
Yep.
It's connecting with other gals, well, guys and gals, but there's a lot of guys that I've connected with, but just other women who are like, yeah, I haven't thought about things in a while since having kids, and now I can think again.
Yeah.
And because that was me. That was just giving me a space to think and look over identity. I really like having things labeled, which is so funny because that's a more masculine thing, giving names to things.
Adam, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm totally stealing everything from Peugeot, but that's okay. But I like to know what's going on and what's happening and why, and it helps me to sort of handle things better. And so talking all of these things, I'm also a verbal processor. So I was speaking with Cassidy, because you've had her on your channel, I think, before. And so I don't think that this interview's gone out yet. It's supposed to go out next month. So it depends on when you put this out. But I was saying, like, I think it's just like my YouTube channel has been like a journal for me, like a video journal. It's recording my thoughts of where I am and what I'm thinking, and helps me to just work out what's going on, and saying things out loud helps me to know where I'm at. And especially if I'm like producing this video, because I'm like, I'm making it look good, I'm adding clips, so it's taking time.
Yes.
As well as talking with people. But I usually look over my interviews because I like to make them a little shorter, and I hate pauses. I do it the long way. I honestly, this is one of the reasons why I've slowed down so much, because I don't have time to rewatch an hour and a half, and I usually like to, because I like to get rid of like the little pauses or maybe even like a tangent or two. Not always, but sometimes. Anyway, I don't have as much time as I used to.
I took a note from Paul, and I just he's like, don't edit, or and
I know, that's so smart. This is why I've gone live a couple times, and it's just like, okay, can't edit.
That's why I do the intros live, because on StreamYard you can't like take I couldn't record it after and then put it at the front, so I just do it so that I don't have to go back and sometimes there's some pauses and I mispronounce a word, and I'm like,
that's fine.
I used to really be like even more like what you're talking about, and I've had to let go of some of that for my personal growth, like let go of some of the necessity for it to be as close to the ideal as I can get it. And so blah blah blah. Here we are.
Anyway, I guess I'm like, oh no, I'm getting into the nitty-gritty of editing. I know it's riveting.
No, I think it's cool. I mean, I think people probably wonder about that if they're not doing it, how people do these things. But I heard Paul. I mean, he was like, don't edit. Just I don't remember who he's talking to. It wasn't even that long ago. I was like, I'm gonna go with that too. And so that's what I've been doing. Because at first, some of my earlier ones that I put on YouTube, I did spend more time trying to craft them. And I'm like you, me and my wife have 3 kids, very similar aged. And it's interesting because you were talking about some people maybe even call it coming out of that fog of motherhood or something. My wife just last week started grad school, and so
good for her.
So she's really it's just really awesome to see her come alive, like with her mind again, like in that way with these things. And so, not that she wasn't using her mind, don't
No, I know. No, but that's what I'm saying, because you're so busy keeping little people alive.
Yeah.
And also it's not that the other moms are like, oh, let's only talk about mom stuff. It's not like they're doing that on purpose. It just, that's sort of the subject of the day, of the time in life.
Yes.
So I think that's why like moms have book clubs like that, and also to, I guess, drink wine. I'm not really much of a wine drinker. I'm a beer gal.
Are you still totaler, Southern Baptist, teetotaler?
No, my mom was. My mom's like, heaven forbid, real wine at communion or anything like that.
Oh yeah, that's a big step. Actually, my church, my little church, that was something new we did recently.
Awesome! I would love to do that in my church. They're not against drinking or anything, but.
Well, I listened to even you were talking then, it was a year ago, about the pull towards Orthodoxy, but it sounded like you had kind of settled that even about a year ago, and you're still, it sounds like, still going to a Protestant or to an evangelical church.
Well, I am. I really like. I'm going to a local church now, so I felt like the church I'd gone to since I was literally born wasn't. It just, when you've been there for so long, and if you don't really have connections, or if those connections have left, you sort of just want to. Like, it's like, oh, I know, like, oh, hello, familiar face that I don't really know, and why would I introduce myself? Because I've literally gone here always. So my husband and kids and I, we now go to a church that's within walking distance. It's literally like 3 blocks away, and I love it because so we do a liturgy that's a call, like the person at the front says their lines, and then we say our lines that are highlighted. And so I like that there's a little bit of a liturgical piece, and we do communion every week. And the pastor has an icon in his office. I spoke with him about it. I actually I'm like, I need to talk to you about if it's authentic for me to be attending this church. Because I just needed to know, like, I needed to know, like, are you a regular pastor? Or are you like a cool pastor who's down with the traditions?
Well, it sounds like it.
And he is, like, he's like, keep asking. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I guess I'm done. Because I felt bad because I'm like, I want to go. I do feel a pull to the traditional, the traditions, the liturgy, even the doctrine of the Orthodox Church. And I think we've jettisoned much in the evangelical church or Protestant, depending on whether you're whichever version, like whether you're, I think that Protestant people say, like, it's always been called evangelical. I think North America, it was like, we're evangelical Christians, the true ones. But then I think Protestant just sort of encompasses like Western Europe seceding from the Catholic Church, and then North America as well. Anyway, I'm getting too technical. So I feel like this is a stagnant space to be in, and we're all like, oh, we're the right ones, just the same way the Pharisees were, and it doesn't sit well with me. But I also see dragging my whole family over to a very different tradition doesn't seem great. And my pastor agreed. He's like, it's if it was just the two of you and your husband, like, that would be a bit of a different story, but it is you and your 3 boys. And so that was one of the things. He said other things, but it was very helpful speaking with my pastor. So.
But you are doing things like you did turn towards history, and you took steps toward history, it sounds like.
So that is one of the things. Sorry, I'm just thinking about all the ways that I'm not following that I wish. I'm just talking about, my kids are talking about Lent, because I started doing Lent, and they're like, what can we do instead? Because our Lent has been, for the past 2 years, no desserts. And I think that's a good, I think that's a really good sort of compromise, to be like, okay, you still get to have your sweet things, but only before dinner, and so baby steps. And then I started talking about how, like, fasting towards the feasting, and how you don't really care much about feasting if you haven't fasted, and blah, blah, blah. Then I'm all like, no, we're not doing that. So it's a thing that, like, we're doing the steps that I think work for our family, and so these are present thoughts. This is the paradox of being a Protestant who is drawn to the traditional, but my own theology lines up better with theirs. That's a Protestant way of thinking. That is a Protestant way of thinking. The Orthodox space doesn't concern itself with that, because it's part of the, like, no, are you participating?
The embodied life.
Yes. And I'm just like, man, I'm so Protestant in my draw towards the Orthodox. So this is why I'm like, okay, Lord, you know what's right, and help me. This is one of the reasons why I've really shifted my YouTube channel to be really focused around narrative, and particularly, like, the feminine role within narrative. And I look at modern narrative now, film or ancient narrative, or in the middle. I'm happy to look at fairy tales or ancient myths or films. Like, get it all in. Sorry,
you shifted that way because you're because you don't want to talk about the church stuff. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's more. It's not about it's like, I haven't joined an Orthodox church, but I'm exploring the things. I'm exploring the ideas.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not going, I'm looking at the. It's not necessarily Orthodox things that I'm exploring, but it's the symbolic things that Jonathan Peugeot has talked about. And I know I don't want to conflate that just because he is Orthodox, all the things he talks about are Orthodox. But I do think that the ancient traditions, like looking at Theotokos as the mother of God, and looking at mother, like the mother, sort of the symbolic things that surround that station, her, like, these things we've lost. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that, like, well, if I'm not part of a traditional church, like an Orthodox church, like looking at the narratives and the symbols and the traditional way of looking at story and understanding it, I feel like that brings me to a space that helps me to understand, like, how to look at the world. Like the idea of icons pointing to God, as I think of them as like signposts. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can start looking at stories as sort of also signposts as well, pointing us to, like, imagine how ancient peoples saw this myth and saw this standing stone or saw this whatever, and it points you up. Speaking of, like, the eventually going back, the calcified.
Oh yeah. So you're on that journey.
The calcified like crust did break through with the symbolic way of thinking, and so I'm just trying to live a life that is a little bit more aware, eyes open, is in the spiritual space. And looking at story helps me to do that, I think, and to understand my role in all of this. Like, this is going back to identity. This is what my YouTube channel has revolved around, me and understanding who I am. That's all what it comes down to. It didn't start that necessarily that way, But this is why I changed the name to Andrea with the Bangs. I had the most convoluted name, the other 95. That was what my channel's name was. And this is from the intellectual dark web folks coined this as like, oh, we're the other 95. 5% of YouTube comments are negative and the other 95 are positive. Or Twitter comments or like whatever the comment sections. And so I just was like, oh, I'll be the voice of the other 95, the positive. That was what I wanted to like embody. And it's so random. It was too random. And I was like, oh, I don't like this name anymore. I'm going to just change it to be me.
It totally
Andrea with the Bangs.
It totally made me think of Martin Luther in 95 Thesis. I didn't know that.
I mean, I'm sure I've thought of that, but I've forgotten. Yeah, I guess that's right.
That's interesting. So taking the turn towards narrative, I watched some of your videos on the interview. I can't remember the guy's name where y'all talked about the story of the divine, of the
Divine Comedy.
No, the heroine's journey.
Oh, with Nicholas Kotar. Yes, yes,
that
he's
fascinated
fantastic.
me. That fascinated me so much because it was a great question. We all know the hero's journey, but do we know the heroine's journey?
I was looking for that for years, can I say?
And whenever y'all said, or he said, Harry Potter's the heroine's journey, I went,
yeah, I know. I was like, what?
And it made sense. I mean, and the fact that J.K. it was a female author, but she put the protagonist as a young boy was so fascinating. And well, that's even fascinating within her own controversy now. But it's like, come on, guys, look right there, it's right there. So
yeah, that is funny.
But yeah, that was incredible. Could you unpack, for anyone who hasn't seen that part, your video on that, if you're able to articulate the difference between, or summarize the difference between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey?
Yeah, I know you're thinking divine feminine.
Yeah, I know that was the other one.
Divine masculine. No.
I want to talk to you about that too. So.
Oh, right. Well, this kind of, it has a bit of this in there. Yes. So I had been for years trying to understand. I wanted to know, like, well, what's my journey? I know the heroes, but what's the heroine's journey, And so I spoke with, I always think of his name as Father Deacon Nicholas Kotar because that's his role in the Orthodox Church, and that's how he's always introduced on the Ortho guys or the Orthodox podcast. Yeah. So Father Deacon Nicholas Kotar. So he is a writer himself, and he also has a podcast. I think it's called In a Certain Land now. It used to be called In a Certain Kingdom. But he translates Slavic stories and tells them, and has like beautiful music in the background. And I can't remember the gal's name who composes it, but it's very good. My kids love it. They love the stories of all of the Ivans. It's always Prince Ivan. It's always a third son, and his name is always Ivan. Anyways. Sorry, I'm just getting a little bit lost in the weeds here. So that's Father Deacon Nicholas Kotar. So he's a writer and he tells stories. And so he is the one who finally gave me the answers I was looking for about the heroine's journey. So where the hero goes out and there's the call to adventure and he goes, and this is summed up in The Hobbit. You could imagine it with Bilbo, like Gandalf is literally calling him. You could also see it in Star Wars with Luke Skywalker, and even actually no, we were saying how Harry Potter is more of a whatever. Anyways, so yeah, so we'll save that one for the heroines. But okay, so yeah, so you can see this in multiple, many.
Neo from the Matrix.
Right. Yes, that's another good one. Yeah. So you go out as an individual. Usually there's someone to help you, like a sidekick type person. Usually there's the old mentor, but he usually pieces out a quarter of the way through. So, and then you come back and you are changed and you have to bring what was you found back to the community. And so for the heroine's journey, she is someone close to her is taken from her. Usually it's family, it could be a friend. And so what Nicholas was saying was that the story of it's called like the rape of Persephone, and it means the taking of, the non-consensual taking of the daughter of the goddess Demeter from Greek mythology. So she was taken by the god Hades, the god of the underworld. And so Demeter she embarks on a journey to go find Persephone, and she removes any beauty she had and dons like the haggard visage of a crone. And so this is something, that, and I remember asking in that interview, like, okay, so in the Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, and mind you, the older myths are different, like they're more like
undisneyfied.
Yes, they're more stereotypical. No, not stereotypical. That's not the right word. I suppose it is, but they're more like, I guess, of a like groundwork. Whereas the older things, like even Hans Christian Andersen, he's still like much newer than the myths, but he still had some of these things, like so I can't remember their names because stupid Frozen ruined my memories of the actual story. But there's a girl and her best friend, the boy, and he gets taken. And so she has to go find him. And I'm like, well, what is she change herself? She's just a little girl. And he's like, oh, she loses her shoes. Her shoes get taken. She has to leave so quickly. She loses her shoes. And even for Harry Potter, he gets his scar. So that's what I'm thinking. For him even, and even the cloak of invisibility, maybe there's something there too. But anyways, so it surfaces in different ways. It doesn't have to be exactly like, donning the haggard look of a crone, but it's something about you go out and search and you're different. You're kind of diminished. Like you were sort of naively happy, and then it's basically the story of a mother. Like your children will leave you, and that's sad. But it's sort of like that. Like that's kind of like just part of this, and so when you go out, after you've gone out, things have changed. Like Persephone eats some 3 or 4 pomegranate seeds, and if you eat the food of the underworld, you must stay. And so she, by rights, must stay. However, Demeter appeals to Zeus and the other gods. Basically, I think that like they put it to a vote, or like they just decide, okay, you know what? It's tiny little seeds. We'll just say it's a month per seed. And so this is where we get Greek winter, because definitely for me here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, it's number of more pomegranate seeds that were eaten, I suppose. But like 4 months of winter is the sadness of Demeter, and then she's rejoicing, and things come back alive when Persephone returns. So it's the idea is that like even if and also there's the found family. I forgot to say that part. There's the help. The help that comes isn't necessarily a sidekick. It's sort of like the found family,
a community, and a family.
The friends we made along the way. Yeah. So ultimately, though, the idea is even though she's back and the world is sort of shifted, and this is something that was interesting, and I'm not saying it as well as Nicholas does, so please go look for this on my YouTube channel if you want to get a
link. Link in the description.
Right, link in the description. So if you go look there, like he fleshes it out better, but the idea is that the world has changed, and you're not bringing new knowledge in the hero's journey. You're like, you come back and the world is shifted around you, and the idea is, the kids have grown up. Like literally her daughter is like now a wife, and she was a maiden before. and you can't undo this, you know, and it's sad. It is sad, but I was happy to find it. So I'm like, I wanted to know, and now I know.
You know what that makes me think of? Interstellar.
Oh, how so?
Well, Matthew McConaughey, he goes out and he finds a new set of friends. But when he comes back and he's changed and the whole world's changed and his whole family's grown up, like because of the time. And I wonder if that's more of a heroine's journey. And a lot of the story is based around his daughter, actually. You know, and I don't know. He kind of has to go down. And then there's like the time that he spends down there. There's like 7 minutes is 7 years or something, like, you know, or whatever. I don't know. I made that part up, but I don't know. That's just as you're like, I was like, I wonder if there's other. I wonder if old Christopher Nolan was toying around with the heroine's journey in that.
Because you can have both. You can have like a mix of both as well. That's also covered in our interview. So it's just nice to have an answer. I remember that was such a huge thing for me to get, because I think I was listening to Nicholas talk about Rings of Power last year, and I hated it so much because I thought that
I didn't even try.
Good for you. Good. You didn't miss anything. So it misrepresented Galadriel so much, so badly. And he was talking about how he's like, they're getting the heroine's journey all wrong with her. And I was like, oh, I must ask him. He knows something I've been looking for. So that was why I asked him.
Oh, that's cool that it was stated explicit and you were able to, I mean, that's so cool. You were able to, because of this, you know, go out and and make it this tangible. It is a beautiful thing to not, you know, you could go read the blog, you could go watch his videos, but you got to have that conversation.
Yes,
and,
I was so glad he said yes. Yeah,
you know, I think that's awesome.
Well, I also want to say it's a bit of a contradiction here. Like, I am making explicit the things that are implicit, like the feminine way, like the divine feminine. If we'll bring that in, you know,
go for it.
These things are unsaid. In the masculine way is making things known and said aloud. And this is what I don't mean explicit, like R-rated. I mean like known, like said out loud. And yes, and whereas the feminine is it's hidden,
veiled, secret.
Yes. And so I am a bit of a walking contradiction in that I've always been very like, here's what I think, and I don't want to keep anything hidden, and you won't be wondering what fine means when I say I'm fine. No, it's fine. My husband never wonders if I'm not okay. He knows, like, very clearly. That's one thing that I think he appreciates. He's just like, you're good, and you're not. It's very clear. So that I can't hide it.
I've talked to Karen Wong in this space too, and she had a similar disposition, you know, like that she always wanted to be talking, like, I guess, more direct about stuff, you know.
And it's not bad. We're all a mix, right?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm having trouble with my bangs. Anyway.
Andrea with the bangs.
I know.
Trouble with the bangs.
I know.
Man, how could you do that to your own brand?
I know. Well, I've had people be upset when I have them pulled back. I'm like, I just change my hair sometimes, but I guess I did this to myself. I chose the name. So.
I do think we'll swing back to the church stuff, because that's what the divine feminine, that's the way that I interpret that lens, is coming from, you know, a very Baptist raising. I heard on your story, I'll just give you a little backstory here, is that your grandparents were like missionaries, and you said one of them was like teaching VBS in the Northwest. Did I hear that correctly when you said someone was doing VBS, like an aunt or something?
My mother did.
She taught VBS like as a job?
Yeah, for like 5 years in Oregon.
Who did she do that with? Like, what was the organization?
It was in Bend, Oregon, and it was CEF.
What is that?
Child Evangelism Fellowship.
Was it Southern Baptist? Was that a Southern Baptist program?
No, it was with no, it's just it's its own organization.
Okay. Bend, Oregon. I know people that this. Yeah, my sister-in-law did a travel nursing.
Oh, okay.
Up in Bend. It's a really cool place from the pictures, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I was always like a kid, and I was always like, okay, I guess it's foresty.
Yeah, that's true. But I say that because my grandfather, he worked for Lifeway, which is like the publishing house. He was the Sunday school board, I guess, back then. And
Okay.
he was helping teach churches how to do vacation Bible school in the 50s and 60s. That was like his
cool
job. Was everyone, at some point in history there actually wasn't vacation Bible school. I don't know,
It had to be created.
Yeah. So anyways, because we weren't catechizing, we needed other ways to catechize.
I know, and this is what I mean. It's not slogging off the little altar calls. Like, the Lord knows the hearts and what you've done with it after, with these little children. And it's not a bad thing. It's just sort of like, well, you need further guidance after the VBS.
Yeah, I could talk a whole nother podcast on theology, but you're like, go for it. The other question, I guess, so what I was going with that was the divine feminine. Is I definitely think, like, whether it's Catholic or Orthodox, but the early church historical part of the church, like, they recognized, for whatever reason, how it's perceived now in all sorts of different ways, but that it just seems to me, in a very Petersonian way or symbolic way, that we needed a space for the divine feminine. And so that's how I look at that. I don't look at it theologically. I look at it as anthropologically, or this is, regardless of which theology you want to pick to believe, that is a real part of what it means to be a human in the world that God made. Is that we need the divine, Father and the divine Mother in a way. Like, we need these things, the yin and the yang, or that's, I mean, and even that's how we are, and we need them to be represented in ways that can help us orient our lives, in our position in the world. And so that's how I look at it. What are your thoughts, or why were you focusing on femininity, or wanting to bring that into more of a said way?
So this is sort of a funny, it's interesting because I think it's because I grew up without a father. My father died when I was less than a year old.
Yeah. And
that is partially why I think I don't understand a lot of my femininity, which is, I don't know the connection, other than I don't actually know.
Because there wasn't a counter. You didn't have that counter,
I suppose.
That kind of reflect the difference in your life.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm like, I don't know how to put it into words, but yeah, that's an apt point. Yes. So I think it's something to do with that. I didn't know, because society, you have all these things that society says about, like, well, women this and women that, and I this is one of the things I was saying about how I'm so vocal about what I'm thinking when, and I the fact that I'm on YouTube at all, and it's not to do with feminine typical things, so I sort of was like, oh, that's not bad. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's a thing I didn't understand. And I also didn't understand, like, okay, well, I'm not going to not share my feelings and be vocal and out there. I'm not going to change my personality. I will never be a demure, quiet woman. But I'm not going to be one of those, like, Marvel heroines either, where it's like, I'm going to huge muscles and I'm stronger because that's what the script calls for. And like, so I'm like, what? Where am I? Like, where am I then? I just didn't know, because I didn't really fit. but I wasn't either of the vision of what women are told we should be. That's something that I've realized recently. Like, men are told what they should not be, and women are told what they should be.
Yeah.
That's a thing. I need to explore that more.
Don't be a sissy. And then it's like, yeah, you should do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, and don't be too toxic, men. Don't do this, don't do that. Yeah. I mean, for women, it's like, you can have it all.
A girl should, be this and that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, either it's like, oh, get back in the kitchen or go conquer the world. But wait, what? Stop telling me what to do. But all that to say, I just, this is why my YouTube channel is called Andrea with the Bangs, because it's like, this is going to be about whatever I'm needing to talk about, to figure out, so I can know what's going on in the world and what I'm thinking about and what I've been moving through. So, and the femininity thing came up accidentally. I wasn't trying to talk about it. It was something that was lacking in my understanding. And so whenever anyone would bring it up who I spoke with, I would sort of hone in on it. And so I'm like, I think this is a theme for me. So I think I should go in with it even more. So
what have you discovered through it? Something.
Well, I do have answers. Thank you for asking. I was just trying to pause because I'm like, I think I've been going on too long, but you asked exactly what I was hoping you would. Oh, I'm way too open about like my thoughts. I'm like, thank you for asking me the thought I hoped you would.
It's fun. This is fun.
So what I discovered is that you can't learn the feminine by talking about it. You can't. You have to, for me as a woman, sorry, man, you kind of have to just listen to conversations, I guess, about it. But you have to participate in it. You participate in femininity. You participate in it. And I've when I've talked about this in the past, I like tear up. So I'm hoping I'm not going to right now. Like, I found that on the Bridges of Meaning server with the women there. There are some women there who are in a sort of mentor age space for me. So I felt mentored by them. And they started a knitting group. I did not know how to knit. And I wasn't even thinking I would learn. I'm like, I'll just do some mending. I'll like sewing on buttons and like ripped seams because I know how to do that. I just didn't. And one of them was like, no, you can do it. You can learn how to do it. And I was like, oh, okay. You think you can teach me? Like, I'm all like, I don't know how. I'm nervous to learn. So, but the thing is about these textile arts, they're so old. It's such an old tradition passed down from woman to woman, mother to daughter, aunt to like niece, like grandmother to granddaughter. And when you participate in these sorts of things, it's like something happens. It's like, I want to say like something magical happens, something deep happens. And I don't want to say everyone, if you start knitting, you'll be like, oh, look, I'm one with the divine feminine, but it helped. It happened that way for me. It felt like because we were just chatting and we're knitting and I'm learning and I'm like learning in a way that I'm like, I didn't think I could do this. And she's showing me like, okay, so here's the needles. So here's how you do the slip knot. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to, okay, and I unfortunately my kids are all too old for blankets, but I knitted a couple blankets, just lap blankets for my niece and nephew. And I still don't know if I could remember how to start it now, but it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is I was participating in this thing with these women and learning from them. And then at the same time as this, I started dressing in like vintage fashion. And that was like so my mother's parents my mother was a little bit older when she had my sister and me. I'm a twin. We're fraternal, but whatever. So I don't have there's not another me running around. It's just my sister, but whatever. So my mom had my sister and me at the same time, but she was like in her late 30s when she had us. So her parents, like my grandpa was in World War II. And so they're 40s, like a lot of the pictures I have in my head of them, of like the older pictures of their wedding and stuff. It was all 40s era stuff.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Both my parents are the youngest of my dad was adopted when his parents were like 50.
Okay.
And my mom was the youngest of 6.
Okay.
And so I have the same kind of old, very old pictures.
Older generation. Yeah. So my mom was graduated from high school in 1965. So like in that sort of time period, the 40s to the 60s, that's a time period that I feel a lot of kinship with. And I love the clothes. I love them. Like, I wish that we just dressed up like that normally, but I do now. Like, that's one of the thing that I started doing during COVID, because I felt like, oh, no one's around. I can just change my whole style and then emerge. I just emerged.
Metamorphosized.
Completely different. So anyway, so that was a thing that helped me get in touch, I think, with the feminine, because it's sort of, again, there's a lot of like style and fashion and again fabrics and cuts of items and beauty. They're so beautiful, some of these styles. And I've tried to be more open to like, okay, I don't want to be a vintage snob, and I don't want to be like, oh, it's not vintage, so I hate it. So I've been trying to be okay, maybe be more open to more modern styles. So when I'm thrifting,
you could go viral like Kale and make some statements on the internet about backwards baseball caps. And you?
Oh, well, no, I haven't seen it.
He's kind of do you know Kale Zeldin in this space?
I've heard the name. I've been a little bit MIA since I've been, I've started working, so I'm a little bit less available.
I'm just he's kind of got the similar thing about like the classic style meaning something, or having a meaning attached to it.
Well, I just find that I don't like boring clothes. Like, that's what I've realized. So I'm like, this is the thing. So maybe I'm bringing it back to the more aesthetics. I just think that they're ugly. but that's the beauty. That's the part of the feminine that I'm trying to like. I know I'm going a little bit over here. I'm like, when I'm thrifting and I try on things that are modern, I just hate them because they're ugly. But I feel the same way about modern buildings too. Like I just, there's something so lovely about like a nice cut of clothing and colors that go with you and just make you look your best. And I just feel like, I'm like, this is how God meant for us to be. No, God meant for us to just be in a raiment of unshame. But this is the next best thing.
As you were talking about it, made me think of the old 101 Dalmatians with the Cruella de Vil and Anita. I think I can't remember that.
Yeah, it is Anita, darling.
Yes, and that she was a fashion designer, and that there was a lot of, that's that period too, like 40s, 50s.
It is, yeah.
That you were talking about. It's what kind of struck me.
And you could look at Cruella as the like devouring mother, who's the too far. She's literally like wanting to wear the skin of
eat the puppies.
Babies. Yeah. Yes. And in an effort to look, they went to college together. I was like, okay, her old college friend. Okay, was it the grandmother of one of your old college friends? Because that doesn't track, but
it's details.
Just pay attention when you're watching it with your kids.
Oh man, that's actually a good one to pull out. I think I haven't seen that all the time. I've got mine are 14, 10, and 7. I heard yours are fairly close.
They're 12, 10, and 8. Yeah.
Yeah, so really close.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you say to embody the feminine, like that to understand it is not to just discuss it, but to embody it. And I mean, I think there's certain aspects I've probably on the flip side, like being a musician, and like when I was in college, I was like wearing girls' jeans because they didn't have skinny jeans then, like that. I was
really,
flat ironed my hair and was doing the whole emo thing back in the mid-aughts, which was this really feminine, but it's like Aerosmith, like these,
I was just gonna say that. Pop
Yeah, like
stars, or no, like well, not just pop stars, but any musician that makes it big, like
yeah,
Mick
I
Jagger.
didn't make it big, yeah, but they flirt with that feminine, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that was
yeah.
kind of in that emo scene, all these slight, you know, emo emotional kids or whatever, and like I was in that.
Maybe music is more feminine. Maybe there's the flow
Yeah.
of music. Maybe there's something about that.
Well, it's definitely
Yeah.
interesting. David Bowie, you know, like, but that all those guys, you know, but that women are attracted to that also in a
Mhm.
certain way is kind of interesting. But the I grew up in a very rural area, but and everybody hunted and
Mm.
everybody bought trucks, and I was not that guy.
Mm,
And I
mm.
was wondering, like, part of it's because we were really conservative and we didn't focus on those cultural things because we were focused on like church and the end times and you know
The
like
end times, I love it.
those
You
were
have
the
a lot of focus on the end times.
things that were important, not, you
I'll
know,
fly away, oh glory.
yeah, I'll fly
My
away.
grandpa's favorite song.
It we were more focused on that than hunting season, you know, which was like what it meant partially in my culture to be masculine was to
Mm,
participate in that seasonal um you know, my screen went blank. That seasonal rhythm of life.
mm.
And I think that I've had to in a similar way as so did I hear you say you have 2 boys and a girl on
No, I have 3 boys.
oh, you have 3 boys. So I have my older 2 are girls and my youngest is a boy. And that has been the bigger question for me. I was like really nervous to have a son for multiple reasons, but one of them was because I was like, I've got to teach this guy how to be a man. And I
Mm,
don't feel very manly like that,
mm,
you know, like, uh, because like of those things that I had mentioned, like I mean, I never felt not masculine, but like I've never, you know, felt any other way. But as far as like embodying masculinity, I think that I didn't embody a lot of like traditional masculinity. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm similar in that way of on that journey. And so when I see my son do something that what I'm actually he's like teaching me things about it because
mm,
I'm watching him and when he finds something that gives him a certain kind of swagger or a certain kind of like competence, I'm like, there it is, you know,
mm,
and he needs that, like he needs those things to feel confident to move in the world.
mm,
And so like this summer that was learning to ride a bike, jumping into the deep end and learning to swim and
mhm,
you know that those types of that for him they those things meant so much something completely different than they did to his sisters.
mhm, mhm.
So that's kind of how I've been seeing that take place. But I don't know. That's how that's hitting me as you're talking about that stuff.
Well, it is interesting because I am a mother of 3 boys. Like, I have no daughters. Like, it's so I am the feminine space in our home.
Spirit.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that, like, I see it when my boys are like, "Oh, don't tell daddy. Daddy's gonna be really mad." And, like, my husband is so calm next to me. But it's just men are scary.
Yeah.
Men are scary to children.
Yeah.
And even if I'm like, like when I told my husband, I'm like, they think that you yell more than me. And he's just like, what? And I don't mean yell like a scream our head off. I mean, just like get after,
Yeah.
but like they're more, it sticks in their minds more when daddy gets mad.
Yeah. It's
When
true.
daddies have had enough. Uh, and I didn't have, and that's going back to the whole thing of like, I didn't have the dad to be the one who was like that, not safe, but good. To
Mhm.
take the words of Mrs. Beaver from
For Aslan.
Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, yes, of Aslan. Like, I didn't have that. And so I try to check myself when I'm like, oh, don't be too hard on him. Like, oh, but he didn't mean to. And I'm not like that way when it's just me. I'm like, why did you do that? It's like, listen. But when I'm seeing my husband, like seeing their dad get upset with them, I'm like, oh, but here's this is why. So like, maybe don't be so. But that's the thing is like, no, this is what they need. They need dad to be that firm hand sometimes. And it's hard as a mom, like, oh, but my little guy, be nice. But they don't need that.
That takes me back to the Corella image of like holding up one of those puppies and being like, oh, you beautiful, like, and then,
But I'm right. No, it is. But because there's a time where like, oh, my little baby, I need to protect them, where that is an appropriate thing. But as they get older and older and older, you need to like let them be, with their dad more, be with the world more, and like being open to just being like who they are. It's a little bit, I would say, I think it's a little easier for if you have daughters and you're the dad, to let them be who they want to be. And if you have sons and you're the mom, to let them be who they want to be, like identity wise. Because I think that if it's the same gender, you're like, but like if I had a daughter, I'd be like, but like dresses though, like beautiful princess dresses. Like,
I love
right?
that. I love that face. That was my favorite. I know a lot about Disney movies because of Wikipedia. While I'm sitting there watching them, I'm like learning all the back channels of how all those connections were. So, I mean, we've hit a lot of your kind of channel stuff.
I feel like I didn't answer the question about the lack of the divine feminine in the Protestant church, but
yeah, go there. Let's go there.
Oh, did I derail it?
I don't care.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I just want to say I very much agree, because I think getting maybe I did mention it, but like I do think that it's sort of horrible that the mother figure and embodied in Mary, but embodied in God.
Mm-hmm.
Like God isn't masculine or feminine. He's created us in his own image and in an expression of male and female, both images of God, and I think it's a shame that we've I think of it as like, if you have like a room that is exceedingly sterile, and it's like say steel appliances, and like I'm thinking like a high-powered lawyer that's a bachelor but like has an intense cleaning lady and has like white and chrome, or so it's like calcified, like going back to that idea, like this, it's like too ordered, and I think that's what happens when you have a lack of the masculine, too much of the masculine and a lack of feminine. Like you need to have some softness injected.
Even compromise maybe is I don't know if that not compromise your faith, but like something gray, something like you're saying, not as black and white, like on that helps.
And well, it's like being enmeshing them together, because this is literally what God said was good. Male and female, he created them, and he pronounced it good. And if you get too much of the feminine, I mean, you get a hurricane, or a typhoon. So watch out. So, but that's in different. That's more in, like, I would argue, the more social justice space over feminization. But in the church, it's a little bit, I would say, on the other end. But so yeah, I just wanted to touch a bit more on that bit. But I don't know, maybe
I think we could extrapolate that out into a lot of things we see in the culture. But I think that even just like saying what we said, it's kind of like we'll do like the Martin Shaw thing, which is just like we've told a story about there needing to be feminine and masculine realities in the church, and people can like make their own. They can let that kind of go where they want it to go, to kind of map that onto those things, because my mind went to like 10 different things.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I'll take, well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else on like the church front stuff. Do you mind saying like what kind of church, what it's affiliated with, the one you're going to? Is that?
Yeah, so it's called
Is it
it's a Church of Christ church.
Okay. Do they have music? Do they have music? Like,
yeah.
or is it just singing? Like, do they have instruments?
Yeah, they have instruments. Yeah. It's not super it's not like super conservative or anything, but it's not I would say it's pretty moderate.
Sure.
It's pretty moderate. So
I mean, you're Canada. How conservative can you get in Canada?
Well, Alberta is the most conservative of all of, I think, the provinces, but it is still Canada. So our conservatives probably more
pretty
moderate.
conservative. Yeah.
No, more moderate, I'd say.
Yeah. So you're like the Arkansas of Canada.
I don't know if we would say that.
They both start with A.
I am a flyover state. Like we are kind of a flyover province, but
that's true. No, that's.
I'd say Texas because we have oil. So gotcha. Alberta and Texas usually have pretty.
I guess what I wanted to say was that when I said you're like retouching on some traditional things, like when you said that you walk to your church, like that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. And then you said y'all, and Church Christ for different reasons, but they take communion weekly, which actually in certain ways it does kind of harken back to some of the more traditional historical views on communion in a certain way. And then so those types of things, and then that there's like some call and response. Like if you grew up driving from the suburbs to your church, or you grew up not taking communion weekly, or you grew up like, those are embodied differences that if I think it makes a difference in how you, and part of it's how you choose to approach it, and as a Protestant, I guess you could say, but yeah, I don't know, something I don't know if it's like came up with this, like, I'm a priest, but I'm not everybody's priest, and that I still need a priest, but I'm still a priest.
Do you mean that in like the sense of like brothers and sisters in Christ kind of thing, or are you actually like do you do that? I'm like, are you a priest for profession? Or?
No, like the priesthood of the believers.
Yeah, that's what I was. Okay.
Yeah, so like, but I also think that we also need priests or pastors, like, and that that's as much of a role, that's as much of a spiritual role in a sense, like we were talking about, is like the divine feminine and masculine. It's like we need that. We need a head in our life like that way. I don't know. And some of it, I think in this world of YouTube where you can get all like, when you can talk to Orthodox people, or you can go on, listen to Lord of Spirits for 200 hours, and it's like, okay, I need to be Orthodox. It's like, well, or whatever, pick your poison, whatever it is. Not that that's poison, but that some of it is, to Jonathan Peugeot's point, and to Vervaeke's points, how you as a person attend to these things, how you submit yourself to these things, because you could go be a part of the ideal and still not, in the way that you approach it, just be approaching it kind of like what you're saying, as like a Protestant or something. But that go ahead.
Well, that's where I try to have like open hands about it, where I'm like, Lord, I don't know, but you do. And just help me to remember you in my daily life.
Yeah, that's a big part. That's a huge part. That's in our daily lives. That's
why I really like the Jesus prayer.
You
know that, like, Lord Jesus, have mercy on me, a sinner.
Yeah, I've adopted some praying less extemporaneous, tons less extemporaneous, and allowing like the Lord's Prayer, and I even sometimes pray like the Apostles' Creed as like a way to kind of just like something that I have memorized, that because I have it memorized, I can bring that in like yeah, stuff like that. So rounding this conversation out, I want to go back to some of the stuff we were talking about at the front end of just like why you came into this space, how it's existed in the last 5, 6, 7 years or whatever. What have you seen, like the way you see it now when you see a new person like myself like pop up and you're like, he's doing the same damn thing I was doing, like, or whatever, like how do you see it, and what do you think it's going to be like, and as this all the, and Grim Grizz's words, the wake of Peterson, where do you see it continuing to go, and you kind of already talked about how you want to continue to participate in it, or how you've been now participating in it, but yeah, what do you see?
Well, I see like people going on journeys in different spaces, right? And it is like, oh, you're starting, you found the videos, you're starting here, and the ideas are starting to percolate, and now you're moving on in this space and that space. And because I, like in my journey, like I didn't think I had anything to share, any knowledge or ideas. I was like, oh, but I only have questions. And it wasn't until I started like thinking maybe I actually could share some stuff back now. That's when I started making smaller, like those really small, like 4 or 5 minute videos, sharing what I'd learned. But it took me years before I got to the point where I'm like, I think I have some things. It's taken me a while, but I think I can share some things back now. And I think we're all in different points of our journeys, and it never goes away, because even though I'm like, I think I have some ideas that I can share, I still have, but then there's that new one though that I haven't really finished thinking about, or that I've just started thinking about. Yeah, there's a number of things that are just new subjects that I've like, have not explored that yet. So I know that we all are on a certain like rung of the ladder in our journey, like further up and further in, and I suppose sometimes it's more valleys and than up. It feels more like a down, and that's where we learn our humility. And so I would say, like, just to keep going, and that's great. And I think it's really fantastic. Like, this is one of the things that's good about the internet, is finding people who you're like, oh, no one in my life talks about such things, and I think about these things, and no one's up for chatting about them with me. So I think that that's really great, and I hope that it continues to like sort of ripple out in a positive way.
Well, with that said, hopefully this will do that, and these things will continue to do that. It's encouraging to me. So, Andrea with the bangs, thank you for coming on to yours truly today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Christian. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for letting me go on.
You're welcome. All right.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in and staying with us until the end of today's episode. Your support and digital connection are truly meaningful to me. If you've enjoyed today's conversation and believe that these discussions bring real value to your life, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Your feedback and interaction are crucial in making this space even more meaningful. Also, I've opened up channel memberships on YouTube. By joining, we can foster a stronger community of connection and support the continuation of more conversation craft. Membership is set up to foster this in 3 ways. Level 1, connect via members-only community posts for channel feedback, behind-the-scenes moments, and supportive membership branding on comments. In addition, Level 2, get to watch podcasts a week before they air, along with other unique members-only videos. At Level 3, join scheduled monthly focused small group discussions with other kindred spirits from all over the world. Thank you again for being a part of this journey. Together, we can cultivate meaningful, supportive digital community right here in this little corner of the internet. We'll see you next time.